Mankind has struggled for years with a simple question of what's a better accessory, a wristwatch or a shiny belt buckle. Okay, so we'll start by explaining what a Kamen Rider is. A Kamen Rider, explained in the simplest of terms, is an incomplete monster. Touched on this some in How Strong is Stupendo Bear, that Kamen Riders ride motorcycles and are superheroes. So go check out that video, if you want any more information on that. We'll be looking primarily at Heisei today though, and its mascot for better or worse, Kamen Rider Decade. You see, for the first 9 years of the Heisei era of Kamen Rider, the worlds weren't connected, with each season being its own standalone adventure. That was until Decade started, revealing that the 9 parallel Earths each show took place on were colliding into each other, and it was up to the main character, Tsukasa Kudoya, to save the day by... let me check my notes here. Destroying everything. Kamen Rider Decade, Destroyer of Worlds. His main gimmick was the ability to transform into any of the previous Heisei-era Kamen Riders by collecting their trading cards and scanning them into his belts, allowing him to use all their weapons and powers, and we'll touch more on that later on.
Next, we'll explain real quick what a Ben 10 is. Ben Tennyson was a normal kid until he came upon an alien device that did what it did. Stuck itself upon his wrists with secrets that it hid. Now he's got superpowers. He's no ordinary kid. He's Ben 10. Ben begins his superhero career path with 10 aliens initially unlocked, each with their own unique strengths and weaknesses, and you can find out more about that by watching this cool video that Crackton Network put out. He saves the world from evil aliens, mutants, and monsters, and in some roundabout ways he actually ended up creating his own universe through time travel shenanigans that I won't get into this video. Just trust me, he did.
So this video is going to be about a hypothetical fight between the creator of the universe and the destroyer of worlds. Sounds fair. I know I said we weren't going to use that Transformers tech spec thing anymore, but let's pull it back out for this occasion. We have a lot to go over in this video, and I feel like it's a good way to organize my thoughts here. But before we begin, both characters have been shown using different forms beyond their initial 10 forms. But for simplicity's sake, I will only be comparing the first 10 forms against each other. Now, I don't want to see you guys shouting, "But Alien X!" in the comments, okay?
Strength. Judging strength on these two characters is a weird one, but that's fair. We'll start with Ben here. In the original series, Ben's strongest fighting form, and the one he used most often, was Forearms. Forearms is incredibly strong and bulky, with the alien species being tied to Ben's human age. As he got older in the show, Ben's Tetramand DNA became physically stronger as well, meaning that he's not at peak strength at 10 years old. That being said, he is still able to easily swing cars as weapons and bite through steel. What a beast. And a beast for a beast, Kamen Rider Decade would take on his Hibiki form. Kamen Rider Hibiki is a demon who has trained his whole life. In his show, his main hobby was actually training, which was stolen by Decade when his world was destroyed. At only 7 feet tall as opposed to Forearms 12 though, it seems like he's at a disadvantage. But don't let that fool you, he has a punching force of 20 tons, easily able to cleave a car thrown at him in half. Armed with his +5 Ungekibu Rekka and disc animals, he could turn any enemy into a drum to help him beat them. In this case, Forearms' height just turns him into a larger target.
Intelligence. When Tsukasa finds himself in a new world, his clothing changes to fit the environment, and he finds himself knowing quite a bit more about the local area than he should. In the first episode, upon transforming for the first time, his main thought while fighting was simply, why do I know how to do this? In one episode, he even figures out how to counteract an opposing rider's super speed for about 30 seconds, but that's all it took. Ben, on the other hand, doesn't have the same amount of suspicious talent, having to learn as he goes. However, one of his alien forms is Gray Matter, a species from Galvan Prime, and the same species as the creator of the transformation device, Azimuth. Galvans have heightened thought processes, which allows Ben's super enhanced intelligence to figure out solutions to problems he wouldn't be able to in any of his other forms. The main trade-off being that his small weak form is all but reliant on finding that solution quickly before being eaten by a stray dog. In this case, it boils down to Decade going in thinking he knows all the answers already, and Ben figuring them out in a couple of minutes by MacGyvering some doodads together in a hurry. Hard to say which is the better strategy.
Speed! When Ben needs to be somewhere in a hurry, he transforms into his alien form Accelerate. Get it? Because it sounds like Accelerate. The Kinecellarian. With running speeds at over 500 miles an hour in one of the future scenarios, Ben's older self relies on Accelerate's speed staying as that form at all times. Accelerate can be seen running 500 miles per hour, but in some instances can be seen exceeding this speed, though at a certain point it makes him physically strained. When it comes to speed, Kamen Rider Kabuto's Clock Up is where it's at. When activated, the Kamen Riders move at such a high speed that raindrops hang in the air around them. In his Kabuto form, Decade has access to Clock Up and uses it to defeat many of his enemies in super speed faster than they can see what's coming. In Decade's show, the Kabuto Rider is stuck in his Clock Up speed for years, constantly moving faster than the naked eye, whereas Accelerate needs to slow down eventually or he'll hurt himself. In this case, Kabuto is much faster than accelerate. It's simply a case of endurance at that point.
Endurance. When it comes to endurance, there isn't a rider form more likely to survive than Ryuki. There's a joke there somewhere, let me know if you got it in the comments section. Ryuki, or as the Americans call him, Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, is a rider who used a contract on a dragon. Through many hardships, Ryuki endures and keeps coming back stronger than before, able to defeat all the mirror monsters along the way. Hey, he can even jump through mirrors as a way of fast travel. Speaking of jumping through mirrors though, we have Ghostfreak, the Ectonurite. Ghostfreak has the ability to phase through solid objects and is a ghost basically. Why do I list him for endurance? Well, because the Ectonurite have personality intertwined directly into their very DNA, which allow the DNA sample Zs'Skayr to escape the Omnitrix entirely and become one of Ben's greatest foes of all time. A ghost is pretty much the opposite of survival, but maybe it's not the best example. Diamondhead, the Petrosapien, has a pretty strong body that can regrow its limbs, but it can also be shattered and is weak to sonic sounds. It's a toss-up.
Rank. Zs'Skayr. That's such a dumb name. I hate it so much. Zs'Skayr actually makes more sense for rank than endurance, so pretend I didn't bring him up already. A cold, calculating, manipulative leader of his home planet, he realized that he could ensure his survival by possessing another alien while it was being scanned into the Omnitrix. They were all living beings before they were put into the Omnitrix?
Yeah, how...
The Omnitrix has a collection of DNA, but Ghostfreak's, like, his species is able to, like, copy themselves from their DNA because they're basically a species of ghosts.
Yeah, so the others are all, like, scanned in, like, Beast Wars when they scan the animals and then they turn into those same animals. It's the same DNA.
Or Animorphs when they collect the DNA and they can turn into the animals.
We really need to broaden our horizons and not use 90s examples, I think.
It's all we know, Brian.
Is
Not only was he the high ecto-lord of his home planet before this, but once freed from the Omnitrix, he eventually presents Vilgax, Ben's arch-nemesis. Wait, I thought Ben's arch-nemesis was Kevin 11.
No, Kevin is his rival.
Oh, I see.
It's like in the Pokemon games, your rival is like Gary, but then the main villain is like Giovanni.
Ah, I understand.
Ben's arch-nemesis.
And took over his home planet as well. It took teaming up with Vilgax for Ben to finally succeed in defeating this twice-over global dictator and place him back in the Watch where he belongs. Meanwhile, Kamen Rider Kiva was a violin-playing vampire who eventually made it to Emperor form. Decade outranks Kiva, having full access to the Emperor form, as well as being able to fold and contort the young ruler into a bow and arrow. Did I forget to mention he can turn the other riders into weapons? Anyway, so an Emperor is clearly not as high ranking as Dictator, but I feel like they're at least somewhat comparable. However, there's also the rank for the actual characters outside of their extra forms. Ben becomes such an important member of the Plumbers organization that he gets a full section in their history books, a full chapter and a half on him, and he has a lot of pull with them, but actual ranking wise, he's not really near the top. His celebrity status prevents him from even wanting to progress further in his career path, essentially settling into a life of leisure, playing soccer and whatnot when he's not a hero for hire. Decade, on the other hand, was hand-selected by the Time Jackers to be one of the potential kings of time and space, of which there can only be one. Decade went along with his plan just because it allowed him to help the heroes in their journey, not really caring what happened. Although he was leader of Thai Shocker and used that rank to kill all the Power Rangers, it all turned out to be a ruse in order to do something. Basically, he has a high ranking in most organizations he's in, but shirks his responsibilities to continue wandering around, trying to figure out what the plot of his show was actually about. He's just a passing through Kamen Rider. Remember that.
Courage! With courage, both characters are at a full 10. Neither of them are typically afraid of anything, and they quickly conquer any misgivings they have. This is the only stat I will include numbers for because I'm confident they are both maxed out. Something Max is cooking. Brian, write a better joke for this part.
Fuck you. Firepower. With firepower, we need to look at characters more suited to special fighting styles, and the one that immediately springs to mind with Ben when you think firepower is clearly Heatblast, the Pyronite. Heatblast is constantly on fire and is able to melt asphalt and vehicles down to smolder and ash. His heat is so intense that he was described as going supernova hot on a few occasions, but as that would be hotter than the surface of the sun, it was likely just an exaggeration. Over on the rider side, I want to point out that Hibiki can breathe fire, but that's not the form I want to talk about here. Instead, I want to talk about Kuuga. Kuuga, in his own show, was so powerful that one of the trademark rider kicks could level an entire building, and he warned the police before his fight so they could evacuate the city before a climactic battle. In his Kuuga form, Decade also has access to Kuuga's Cho henshins, allowing him to switch between forms and grab any item in the battlefield to transform it into a weapon based on that form. The Dragon Rod, the Pegasus Gun, and the Titan Sword may look like normal kids' toys, but each one has a couple tons of force. Still, I gotta hand this one to Heatblast.
Skill. With skill, I think we need to put aside the direct alien to rider comparisons and talk about the main characters and their ability to control these forms. At this point, it's clear they can turn into these powerful characters and each wield godlike powers. But what's more important is the person controlling the powers. With Decade, he is the destroyer of worlds and the secret leader to Dai Shocker, an organization that went all the way back to the original Kamen Rider series from 1971. Tsukasa Kadoya forgot all that, leading an evil organization to destroy every alternate Earth and wipe out all the other Kamen Riders out of existence. Stuff though. He really only wanted to take pictures of things. Too bad he's a lousy photographer, because he's a much better naturally talented fighter. Ben Tennyson, however talented he becomes, is still human at his core. He's brash, sometimes reckless, and outside of his gray matter form, he's not exactly the smartest kid in the shed.
So, in conclusion, you may have noticed I didn't put any numbers on this list. That's where you guys come in. Last week I forgot to put a comment prompt, so this week it's pretty clear. Who do you think would win? I didn't put numbers on stats, but I gave pretty good examples of both, and I'm curious what you guys think. Could Ben defeat Decade, or would Decade defeat Ben?
Anyway, let's read some comments from last week's video. So starting off with comments, Crazy Red Emu says, "My comment is in this video. Woo! In the background. I'll take it."
Super Awesome Dude Face says, "But if you're not telling me what to comment, how I know if I'm doing it right? I don't know, Brian."
Bloody Minnie says, "That was a great watch. I loved it."
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I'm here now. JC
Oh.
Batty. Oh, shush. I have one line in this fucking video. You're gonna cut me off? JC Batty says, "Another great video."
Hey, thanks, man.
So that's the Ben 10 versus Kamen Rider Decade video. But the story doesn't end here. Make sure you check out my new webcomic, Ben 10 10 Years Later, which is all about how he makes out with Danny Phantom for 20 straight chapters.
I would rate it 10 out of 10. Ben...
Fuck you. God damn it.